Thank you all for joining us. This is our, I guess, second official meeting as the Incorporated Community Council. This meeting, we will be having the Port of Seattle making a presentation about airplane overflight, and we'll be taking questions from us. We have already presented a number of questions to the port in writing that they will be answering, and then they'll be able to take questions. But before we get to the port's presentation, we were going to have a short presentation on the community council elections. And do you want to, let's see, we have the minutes from last meeting. So if we can, oh wait, the brief technical overview. Yeah, if you could just tell us about Webex. Sure.
Yeah, let's just back up just a little bit. I'm going to just mention Webex, and then I'm also going to take a look at the agenda. We need to first talk about the agenda before we do the minutes. So,
sure.
So if you are familiar with Zoom, you might not be familiar with Webex. At the bottom of the page, you will see a bar that allows you to mute yourself or unmute yourself or start your video. Share, you can't share content, only I can do that right now. And you can have a chat, you can look at the chat. So if you open the chat, you can chat to either everyone in the group or an individual in the group. And we may be using the chat later on in the meeting. If we have extra time, we're going to open it up for questions from the attendees. And you will submit your questions in the chat if we do that, not by raising your hand or speaking. No, it'll be done by the chat, and people will get their questions answered in order. Okay, so that's a little bit about Webex, and the next thing will be the agenda. And so I would like to,
if you could share that again,
people
on the screen, the agenda. Okay, great.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm trying to mute some people because we're getting some background noise. It's hard to do everything at the same time.
Sure.
Okay. So I shall bring up the agenda. Okay. And so here we have this agenda that we're proposing is slightly different than the agenda that posted on the website. And that is because we would like to have the discussion here on board nominations, and I'm going to highlight that for you, moved up to the discussion of the airport noise. And so that's a change in the meeting agenda that I would like to propose.
Yeah, it's hard to see who's not muted yet.
Yes, I need to. I just.
Still there.
Okay, so David, I've muted everybody but you and me.
Okay.
To try to eliminate this. And
I
so
see a couple
I could
of unmuted still. Yeah, there's still a few unmuted.
I've asked it to mute all, and if it can't, I can't see
okay.
everything. I can't see everyone.
It's working right now. That's fine.
Okay. So I'm going to have to stop sharing because I can't see the participants if I'm sharing, apparently.
Okay. Well, if I could just briefly go over the meeting agenda. Has everyone here had a chance to review the agenda? And is there anyone who has any problems with the agenda as laid out?
Yes, I object. I object to moving the board nomination forward.
And who is that?
It's Kate Spellman on Vashon. I really think we should hear the public. Board nominations can go later.
No, we're not doing board nominations. We're just discussing it briefly, and then we're going to have the port take the rest of the meeting.
I still think it's inappropriate. You made an announcement. We should follow the order.
Okay, noted. Anyone else have a problem with it? Okay, well, Kate, I believe we're going to just do it the way that it's been changed and have the board nominations briefly so that we don't lose many of the participants in the meeting during the port discussion, which will no doubt keep people's attention. Okay, so and also if you use your chat function, can we see the chat function, Diane? Okay. Yeah, is anyone else on speaker? Diane, I see you're muted. I can't hear you, Diane. Well, Diane?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, but we couldn't hear you. You muted yourself. So,
Okay.
okay, well, we will then take the agenda as it is modified. And at this point, have people had an opportunity to review the minutes from last month's meeting?
I'm going to unmute all to
She's getting things. Those two have nothing to do with that. We're trying to figure out the headphones. That.
okay. So the only way, oops, excuse me.
To share the,
So
okay.
We'll go ahead. We're having technical difficulties in trying to do this. We could do a poll, David, of the agenda. If anyone wants to
Object
I'm going
to the agenda.
Yes.
Okay,
so I'm taking a look at the.
How are you going to do the poll?
Just set up a poll, and I could ask a question, and the question is:
All
do you
those in
approve
favor
the
of the
proposed
agenda?
Yeah. Do you approve the modified agenda?
Okay.
Agenda moving nomination discussion up ahead.
Hey.
And so the poll is there, and you'll see it if
What
on
are the
the right of
choices,
your
though?
screen.
I don't see any choices.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I have to do that again. So I apologize for this. I wasn't expecting to do a poll.
No, nor was I.
share. There we go.
Okay. But you gave it a 5-minute time limit.
That's standard.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, you know, we have, see, people we have 21 people who haven't done it yet, 17 of 39. We have 43.6% reporting, 44% say yes, 3% say no. That's going to be fine. We won't have to continue this.
Okay. All right.
We're going to close the poll now. It's obvious.
And
And
are we
it's going to close in a
okay?
few
Are we
seconds.
able? Yeah.
While it's finishing up.
Are we able to show the minutes from last month's meeting?
Certainly, absolutely.
And can we also do a poll for that? All those who approve the minutes?
Well, we could, if we too. I think
Okay. I would rather
could
not,
ask-
but
yes,
it's
we
tough.
could-
If everyone is muted, I can't get the kind of response from people, you know?
Okay, so
Okay.
did you were you able to see the poll results, David?
No.
No. Okay.
Okay.
Do you approve the modified minutes? Because I'm going to- no. So I'm going to share the minutes.
Okay.
Here we go. Here are the draft minutes from our last month's meeting.
We see the agenda. Oh, there we go. Great. Thank you.
Oh, takes a while.
Okay.
We took place July 20th. Here are all the 44 people attended. Here's a list of all the attendees. Well, and those who are on email, get these minutes sent to them. So you have plenty of time to take a look at them. So if you want to have minutes sent to you, get your name on our email list. And you can also video of the meeting. And
Okay.
minutes themselves, we had Webex instructions. June 15th meetings were reviewed and approved. Meeting agenda was reviewed and approved. David Vogel introduced Taylor. John addressed a whole list of questions that were submitted in advance, which you can see the video or the transcript for Mr. Taylor's detailed responses. And it was way too time consuming to try to put all the answers and summarize everything. But fortunately, Paul Rowley at the Beachcomber did a wonderful summary of this meeting and the questions and answers for John Taylor. And I very much like to include that link to what Paul Rowley wrote in the minutes of this meeting. And that's different than the draft minutes that were sent out to everyone after that meeting. So this is a modification of the minutes that I would like to propose. So here we are, all the questions that were asked are in the existing minutes.
Okay.
And answers were really quick. I was able to give an answer on some of them. But I'm just scrolling through all the questions. They're all in the minutes, and they're all on these. When approved, they'll be on the website as well, so you can take a look at these later. But these are verbatim the questions that people submitted to John Taylor. a lot of questions, and they're important things because they're very important to the community. So it's important to document these so we can look on them and say, okay, what did come up and what did John Taylor say? So a brief discussion of board nominations. Bill Moyers announced the formation of a time bank for Vashon, our next meeting, and the adjournment. So those are the minutes.
Okay.
And I'm going to stop sharing them.
If we could very quickly do a poll, can we give it 2 minutes for response?
Yes, we can do that. And
okay, and then just ask, is there anyone opposed? Just one question. Anyone opposed to adoption of the minutes?
Well, have to unmute themselves and say if they are.
Can people unmute themselves?
They can.
Okay. Well, great. Well, then rather than do a poll, let's just ask, is there anyone opposed to adoption of the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are adopted. So if we could move on to the next item on the agenda, Jim Deers was going to be giving a brief presentation on board nominations. Jim? I see you. Think you have to unmute, Jim.
Here we go. Oh,
Okay.
can you hear me now?
You got them. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Yes,
Sorry
you
about
can.
that. I'll be really quick so we can get on to the main topic of airplane noise. But the conflict can be as strong as its board. We have to elect a new board, the board of electing 7 members, and I really want to encourage everyone in on this video conference to consider running. And if you aren't willing to run, I hope you'll find somebody who's willing to run, who would do a good job at this. The main requirements of board members are to attend a meeting each month, to attend the general meeting, and to be a liaison to a committee that would probably meet once a month. But the responsibility of board members is not to represent the community, but rather it's a very particular organization. So they're to listen to the community and to engage the community so that we can get action from the county or take action ourselves and really come together as one united community. So we're really hoping to get people from the different sectors of the community. Nobody could represent or be in touch with the whole island. So really trying to find people who are well networked in the arts community, for example, or the business community, or the environmental community, or the faith community, or the Latino community, or the youth community, or people who span a number of those different networks, that we can do really good outreach and the issues to take up and involve people in making sure we get good action on those issues. The process is to do self-nominations. The nomination form is on the website of the Community Council, and that again is VMICC.net. And if you get on there, you see the only requirements are that you be a Vashon-Maury Island resident, that you be at least 16 years of age by November 1st of this year. And that's really it. And then submitting a brief candidate statement and photo and contact information. Then you'd be on the ballot, and the elections will be held late October, early November, and we'll be electing, as I said, 7 members for the board. So really hope you'll take this seriously. Diane, David, Jeff, been doing a ton of work to get this off the ground, but we really need more people to step up and make this a very democratic, participatory organization. So please give it some thought. If you aren't willing to run yourself, please find somebody who might be willing to run. We hope to have a good contested election.
Hey, thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
And with that, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Stan Shepard and Tom Fagerstrom from the Port of Seattle, who are here to give a presentation about airplane overflight noise and what the next steps are in terms of the island. Stan?
Actually, I think we're turning it over to Marco first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, David. Hopefully people can hear me. First,
Okay.
I want to say a big thanks to David Vogel for allowing us to be part of tonight's meeting. I understand that the Vashon-Maury Island Community Council was recently relaunched, and we are honored to be presenting at one of your first meetings as a group. Again, my name is Marco Milanese. I'm the Community Engagement Manager out at SeaTac Airport, and I'll ask Stan and Tom to introduce themselves real quick as well.
Okay.
I'm Tom Fagerstrom. I'm with the SeaTac Airport Noise Programs.
And I'm Stan Shepard. I manage the SeaTac Airport Noise Programs Office, and talk a little bit about what that is coming up here soon.
Okay.
I think, Diane, if you want to start the presentation.
Oh, wait, hold on. I have a little bit more, Stan. Sorry.
You got more? All right.
Well, we didn't coordinate perfectly before the meeting.
No.
We are here tonight to discuss temporary noise monitoring. And specifically, we want your help in identifying a location for that monitoring to occur on Vashon Island. We've also received a number of emails from Vashon residents prior to tonight, and we got emails just up to the start of the meeting. And those emails include a number of aviation noise and flight path related questions. We will attempt to tackle those best we can here tonight. I'm getting some feedback there. I don't know where that's coming from. I swear it's not me.
If everyone who's not speaking, please mute yourself. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. However, our primary goal tonight is providing the community council with information that they need to make an informed recommendation on the location of a temporary noise monitor. We hope after tonight's meeting to hear back from the community council as soon as is practical, where you'd recommend the temporary noise monitor to be located on the island of Vashon, and what you believe the anticipated start date for monitoring should be. Just to give you a little bit of background, based upon the large number of inquiries and complaints that the port has received from Vashon Island residents about aviation noise affecting their community, the Port of Seattle Commission designated one of the 2 temporary noise monitors they recently acquired specifically for Vashon Island. I also cite, and I'm still getting some feedback here, I don't know where that's coming from.
So, Marco, I'm going to mute everyone and unmute you. And Marco, you just unmute yourself, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I also wanted to cite the determination of David Goebel, Vashon resident who is with us here tonight. I see you, David. Good to see you. For also being a catalyst for why the commission made this decision to identify Vashon as priority number 1 when it came to temporary noise monitoring. So thank you again for inviting us to be here tonight, and thank you for giving Stan the opportunity to present you with information and the background information that will allow the community council to make not only a recommendation where to locate a temporary noise monitor, but also the start date as well. There are a number of parameters and there are a number of limitations that need to be considered when engaged in temporary noise monitoring, and I'll leave it to Stan to explain it in greater detail. Thank you.
Thanks, Marco. And Diane, if you want to go ahead and start the PowerPoint.
Hey.
We go to the first slide, somewhere in the middle there. Okay, there we go. All right, go back just Marco gave us a nice introduction there. So if we go to the next slide. And as he stated, the purpose of this meeting is really to understand where we're going to site that noise monitor, what the location is, what the parameters are about how that needs to be sited, and hopefully provide you enough information to move forward with that decision about both the location and timing. So I hope we can get enough information out of this presentation for you guys to make that decision to move forward. All right, next. So I really want to go over the different roles that the agencies have in aviation. And there's basically three different kind of agencies associated with this. We're the Port of Seattle, and we own the airport facilities at SeaTac Airport. So we're the ones that actually have the terminals and keep all the facilities operating at SeaTac. We do provide outreach to help communities understand airport noise and the impacts associated with it. And we implement what we call noise abatement and mitigation programs. Noise abatement is trying to monitor the aircraft in the sky, working with the airlines to come up with quieter aircraft if it's possible, and then coming out to the local communities around the airport to implement what we call mitigation programs, which is sound insulation and some limited acquisition programs. So those are really the role of what we do at SeaTac Airport with the Port of Seattle. The Federal Aviation Administration is the one who really manages the national airspace system. So once the aircraft is in the sky, understanding where that aircraft is flying and controlling the aircraft in flight. So anytime that aircraft leaves the ground at SeaTac Airport and gets into the sky, it's the role of the Federal Aviation Administration to control that aircraft, direct it where to go, and manage those kind of flight paths that they're in. So they're the ones that develop flight paths, and they're the ones that manages the flight paths. They ensure the use of noise abatement procedures. So we do have some procedures close into the airport, going in and out of the airport, of where those aircraft should be flying. So we work closely with them to make sure that we understand and what kind of direction they're giving to the pilots and where those aircraft are told to fly. They're also the regulators of airports around the country. So they provide grant funding to the airport. And as long as they provide that millions of dollars in grant funding to the airport that they've done throughout the past 70, 80 years to SeaTac Airport, we have to abide by the federal regulations associated with what the FAA establishes for airports. Now, airlines are the ones that are directly responsible for scheduling flights based on the demand, again, of the community, when those aircraft will fly, and kind of what aircraft types they fly out there also. So what is the fleet mix of that airline? Are they noisier? Are they quieter fleets? It's all up to the airlines to schedule those and to maintain those. And they are the ones that are ensuring that the pilots fly within the noise abatement corridors also. So those are the three different roles of the different agencies that kind of come into play. So I think the one thing that I really want to stress is the airport does not manage those flight procedures. All right, the SeaTac noise monitoring system, we've had a noise monitoring system around the airport for a number of 24 permanent noise monitors located around the local communities. And they're both north and south of the runways under the departure and arrival flight paths. Our Port Commission has requested that we purchase and implement 2 temporary noise monitors, and they did that earlier this year. One of those, they slated to go on Vashon Island for 12 months. So that's what we're here to talk about, where to place that noise monitor. And then the noise events are correlated with each flight path utilizing our flight track and noise monitoring system. So we have a flight tracking system, and we know where every aircraft is at in the sky, the altitude they're at, the type of aircraft, everything associated with that. And then noise events from the noise monitors are actually downloaded each night into our vendors database, and they correlate those noise events that were in the noise monitors and correlated with the air traffic that went over to get the most probable event and correlate that with the noise event. That's how we know what is the most likely noise associated with the aircraft that flew over during a given time. So aircraft noise event data is gathered and shared on a monthly basis through our website. So you can go onto our website and you can download noise data, and the portable noise monitoring data will be downloaded the same way also. Go ahead to the next slide. So the purpose of the noise monitoring system is to really identify aircraft overflights, and that identifying of the overflights, as we talked about, from the noise monitoring system correlated with the noise air traffic, the flight that went over, and then we supply what we call some really aviation industry common noise metrics associated with those. So we talk about what we call a sound exposure level. I always think of that as kind of a one-time overflight. What noise did that one aircraft make when it flew over and it occurred? And we also provide what we call an equivalent sound level metric. That metric is over a given period of time, and it also takes into account community noise. So it's the background, the noise monitoring and flight tracking system separates out the aircraft noise events from the background noise events. And you can see all that information when it's posted online also. And there's the website if you'd like to go in and look at the data that we have. And again, that's where the portable noise monitor will also, portable noise monitoring system will be available also. Next one. So just to give you a little bit of idea of how an airport looks at noise monitoring data, how the FAA looks at noise monitoring data, it's an airport is providing aircraft event information to the public, and it'll be including the type, the airline, the flight number, and the date. We also use it at SeaTac Airport through a couple of programs that we have. One is called the Fly Quiet program, where we're encouraging airlines to maintain our noise abatement procedures, flying quiet over close-in noise monitors, and abiding by our engine testing rules and regulations. We also have another newer program, which was initiated last year, called the Late Night Noise Limitation Program, where we have during the nighttime hours of midnight to 5 a.m. Getting a lot of feedback from them.
Dan, I'm going to have to mute everyone. In order to do that, I have to stop sharing. And then unmute yourself again, okay?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So we talked about that. Oh, back to the other page.
Oh,
so we talked about the, I think,
yeah.
where you're at right now is good. This is good.
Okay.
So we're on the third bullet. I think we were, yeah. Second bullet point. We have the late night noise limitation program, where we're utilizing 4 of the close-in permanent noise monitors to identify very loud aircraft flying out at the nighttime. Back another one. Keep forward.
Forward? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, stay here. This one. And what we're trying to do with that late night noise limitations program is trying to encourage those airlines that are flying very loud aircraft to either move it out of the nighttime hours or to change it to a different fleet. So that's our goal with that. We were making some pretty good progress on that prior to COVID impacting the airline industry, and we're waiting to kind of see how that actually plays out. So how does the FAA use noise monitoring data? And I can tell you straight out, they don't. They don't like noise monitoring data. They don't want anything to do with noise monitoring data. They don't allow us to use it in any of the decisions we're making at the airport regarding where our flight patterns are, or they don't use it for changing flight procedures or any of that either. So the FAA is not a big fan of noise monitoring data. So they don't use the noise monitoring data to allow us to have it as an input variable to our depiction of what we call DNL. That's the day-night level noise. So that's the yearly average of noise around the airport, and it's how we actually develop our mitigation program. So if we're inside of a what we call a 65 DNL boundary, which is very close into the airport, homes could be eligible for us to apply for grant funding to sound insulate those homes. And then noise monitors really it's not a perfect science. So you can't have a noise monitor that's going to be perfectly correlated to every aircraft that went over every time with the exact noise level. There's a lot of influences that go on with noise levels, especially with community noise levels. So if there's boats going by, or if there's motorcycles or kids or dogs, it can be corrupted with community noise. But it's a really good science to where we have an excellent correlation rate with most of our noise monitors that are at least in the higher noise level zones. All right, next one. So we've kind of set up some procedures at SeaTac airports about how we're going to consider noise monitoring, because we're just starting this program off. This will be one of the first noise monitors that we deploy. We have another one that's going to be deployed closer into the airport. And we're basically requesting that local jurisdictions, city council administrators, the city administrators, those sort of things make the ask. We know that you're part of King County, and coming to the community council was a natural decision to come and ask where you would like that noise monitor, because you have made the ask for us already. So placement of the noise monitor, we're pretty flexible with that. It can go on to public land, public buildings when feasible, and that's our preference. If we can't get onto the public land or public buildings, then we will consider to go on to the private land, somebody's private house. That's an option for us, because we know that sometimes getting the location that we want to monitor just is not feasible on public land. And again, we talked about the report that's going to be produced from this, which is the sound exposure level and the equivalent sound level. And we'll also produce a report that's also showing the number and type of aircraft noise events correlated with those. Okay, next one. And we've been asked to talk a little bit about flight patterns, because that does play into your decision about where you want to place a noise monitor on the island. So we realize that there's a couple of different scenarios. If you look on the left side of the screen, we call this our current north flow. So if the aircraft are arriving to the north and taking off to the north, we call that north flow. Same thing with south flow. The right side is the area that is what we call pre-2014, before this next gen approach had occurred at the airport. So you can see not a whole lot of change between this north flow procedure and the pre-14 and the current flight paths. There is some condensing in that area. Still very much straight down the center of the island almost. Next slide. Oh, by the way, the red lines are arrivals, green lines are departure. That's pretty important. And where the red lines and green lines intersect is where SeaTac Airport is. So this is current south flow, and this is the one that has the most impact to Vashon. So if you can look at the right-hand side, before next gen, before that GPS condensed flight track took place and was implemented, the swath of aircraft flying over Vashon was very wide. So it almost took up the entire swath of Vashon Island with the overflights. So there was a natural dispersion, sort of, if you want to say, on that portion of the island when the aircraft are making direct arrivals, coming down through Elliott Bay and turning down into the airport. So now what you're seeing on the left side of the screen here is how flights currently look. They're very condensed over that one line. So all of those aircraft on that right-hand side are now condensed into one very small track coming in. So anybody underneath that flight track does get a high annoyance level simply because they're getting every air traffic or every aircraft coming in. Well, the rest of the island doesn't get that air traffic. Okay, next one. So next we need to talk a little bit about operations. So if you know where the tracks are at and you know where you want to place the noise monitor, presumably underneath that condensed track is the idea I would kind of suggest. Right now, what we need to talk is airport operations. We had a major cut in passenger flights in March due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As you've heard from all the news angles that air traffic is way down. People are not flying as much as they were. So it did go way down. April and May averaged around 400 operations a day. That's the lowest I've ever seen SeaTac Airport since I've been there. June and July operations increased steadily. And in August now, what we're seeing is a little bit more of a rebound with about 900 operations kind of creeping up a little bit. So we're still about 35% down from a normal summer peak. And we have limited international carriers. They're not coming in as much as they were. Some of that are coming in are mainly doing cargo operations. And also the cargo operations have maintained or slightly increased based on the COVID-19. So a lot of the air carriers that were flying a lot of passenger flights, they're not flying passenger flights. They had a lot of cargo in the belly of the aircraft. So once those weren't moving, they had to move that cargo operations to just cargo, 100% cargo aircraft operations. So how this plays into it is operations are going up. So we're getting more and more by the day, but we're also seeing the fleet mix of the airport is not the same as it was pre-COVID levels. So there's a change in fleet mix. So how we're looking at this is it might stabilize, getting a lot of feedback again. We might stabilize.
I know.
I think we're better. Nope. Okay, try it again here. So the fleet mix, we don't know when it's going to return to pre-COVID levels, and we don't know when it's going to return to the operations levels. Operations level, fleet mix levels could be a year out, it could be 5 years out. We're not sure of that at this point. And the next slide. This just gives you a kind of a graph of where it's at. It's easier to depict this operations level in a graph, for me at least it is. So you can see as it went along in 2019, and all of a sudden you hit that March timeframe, that massive drop, and you can see this slow climb again as we're coming out of the issues. But again, we don't know what COVID's going to do. We don't know what the issues are going to be with the airlines and the passenger levels. So that's still kind of a question out there. It all plays in kind of your decision making of, do you want to wait till air traffic increases to a higher level, which could be 6 months to a year, maybe we'll reach a decent level, or maybe 3 to 4 years down the road, who knows? So that's one of the questions you might consider there. The next slide. So again, I kind of coming to the end of the presentation. I'm going to answer a few of the questions that I know we came in with prior to that. So I think that the one thing that we really want to throw at the council is the question again, where do you want the noise monitor located? What I suggest is really an accessible location by port staff. So we need to get on that location, be able to get to the noise monitor, to do calibrations with it, to troubleshoot problems with it, that sort of thing on a regular basis occurs. So accessibility is pretty important to us. If it's located inside of a building that's locked up for 2 months at a time, that's kind of challenging for us. We can't get into it. Power needs to be available. We do have some solar power associated with these, but talking to the vendor in our environment probably is not the most reliable solar power there is. So power is a needed source. And then security for the noise monitors. Nobody likes things flying overhead, and I think these noise monitors on occasions grow wings and fly away for some reason. So we need to tie them down and make sure that they're secure somewhere and can't get away from us. And I think that's one of the bigger things that we've encountered, both with our permanent monitors and years ago when I was doing portable noise monitors, they were vandalized on a regular basis. So we do encounter that quite a bit. Most of it's just mischief and doing something with it, but we do want a secure site for sure. And the next slide. We had some questions about our noise complaint and tracking response, so that was pretty important to go over. We receive about 20,000 noise complaints per month, and via phone calls, the noise comment form, public view, and for the most part, I would say 90–95% of those complaints come in through the third-party app, which is the Air.io noise app. So it's the one where you have the button and you push the button and it somehow links the aircraft up to a complaint, sends it into our office. We do responses to complaints when we're requested. Now, if you do the button and you want to submit a complaint towards the IO noise app and hit the button, you're not going to get a response because we're getting 20,000 of those and there's not necessarily a direct question related to it. So I encourage you, if you want to get a comment or a response or talk to staff, please give us a call or send us an email or use public view to do that. We're working remotely like most everybody now, so we will return calls, but we're not there to pick up the phone right away when you call into the office. So most of it is recorded and we'll be returning calls. The noise hotline there is number you can reach us, and below is the web address for the noise programs. So I'm going to hit on to a couple of questions and then open it up. So one question is, why wasn't the noise monitor cited in the Windhaven Park already? Well, when we purchased our noise monitors a few months ago, we got hit with COVID, so we weren't able to go out into the community. We were stuck with the governor's stay home, stay safe orders. So that's kind of where we ended up a lot with that. And we're working with you. We want to make sure that the location is identifiable by the community council and everybody in the community is agreeing with that location. So that's what we're here to do today. And then said, is it true that the port receives 400,000 noise complaints in 2019? Yes, so that is true. So we went into complaints probably in the previous year where the noise button wasn't in effect, and we were at 3,000 to 4,000 complaints per year. And as soon as the noise button came into effect, then we're up to the 400,000. So that has really impacted the complaint process, and we do separate those out to identify how that complaint is coming into the airport, if it's a web app, if it's through the IO app, or if it's a phone call into the airport. We're really understanding where the complaints are coming in and how they're coming in. Another question, will the Port of Seattle be placing a noise monitor on property that is in line in sight to the airport to monitor direct noise on Maury? And that's up to you. I mean, if that's where you want the noise monitor, we can place the noise monitor there. And this question was really in direct response to the rumbling noise that comes out of the airport for ground noise. It's a challenging one for us, and we're right now, pre-COVID, earlier this year, we started what we called a ground noise study, where we were going to evaluate all of the noise sources coming out of the airport and see if there was something we could mitigate either by operational or by mitigational, in other words, physical barriers or something coming out of the airport. We were going to look at that. Then the COVID issue came in and our operations went down. So we halted that study for a while. And when we can get back at that, we can probably take more of a better look at what are the ground noise sources and what are the issues within the community and identify that. And that might be a good point that we'll take back with us, is that if we have a consultant at that point, at that time, looking at ground noise sources, maybe we can do some portable noise monitoring over there specifically for that. And then the next questions, I have been sending in constant noise comments and requesting feedback as traffic over my home has increased. To date, I have had no response, and I am curious when I should expect someone to acknowledge my comments and how can I communicate with someone about the changes. So please give us a call directly at that noise comment line or send us an email directly. If you're using the Air.io button third-party app, you're not going to get a response. We're going to log those complaints. We're going to keep the statistics, but we're not doing responses on all of those buttons. And then the other one was, can the court comment on whether you are at liberty to make changes to the flight paths used now or under next gen, increase in altitudes, the planes fly over Vashon, or whether the flight paths can be dispersed more in order to accommodate the landowners whose properties have been so adversely affected. We are the Port of Seattle. We don't manage the flight patterns, so that's all up to the FAA. I have no influence on telling the FAA to move flight patterns or to change flight patterns anywhere. So we're here to provide the noise monitoring data, and we don't get involved with changing flight patterns. That's all the questions I have, and I'd be happy to open it up for more questions.
This is Gene Coons. Just a quick question. So if you don't control the flight path, the FAA does, who do we contact there to get things changed? We bought the property on the island for a rural environment, and our rural environment has been destroyed because I hear a plane every 2 minutes.
Yeah, the FAA has recently hired a noise ombudsman, and their information is on their webpage. If you Google FAA Northwest Mountain Region noise, airport noise, that should come up for you. It's fairly new, that webpage is, and there is a contact location on there. I've been assured that they're having a new way to contact the FAA. They've got a whole new system in place to where that's going to be, that complaint will be routed back to a local person in the Northwest region here who can answer those complaints for you. Before that, I know it was challenging getting the FAA, but I've heard they've penetrated, so it's getting better.
Okay, are there other additional questions? We can, yes, Steve?
Yeah, thanks for that presentation, Stan. I'm wondering what elevation these noise monitors should be mounted and how much of a clearing is required to prevent trees and other things from sort of absorbing the sound.
You know, trees aren't going to do a whole lot as long as it has a little bit clearing, because your aircraft is always going to be over the top and the noise is going to be coming down at it. So it's not going to have that side effect to it with the trees. It'd be nice to have a bigger clearing port if it's possible. It also needs to be really kind of clear of other ambient noise sources. If you're thinking about putting it on a building somewhere or near somebody's house, you don't want a big HVAC unit nearby or things that are going to cause an undue kind of burden on the noise. So we really want to kind of keep that ambient noise level as low as possible in a location to where we can pick up those aircraft overflights clearly.
Okay, thanks.
Armin, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if David Vogel could just brief everyone on the call about what we already know about what's been accomplished on the noise monitor location. I think it'd be useful if everyone understood what we already know. And I think what we're actually asking the Community Council to vote on tonight, I hope, would be approving what's already been approved by the Vashon Island Park District.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
No.
But excuse me, David. Like, unmute yourself, David.
Thanks. Yeah, before Dave Vogel talks about that, the Community Council has a policy that, except in emergency situations, we don't vote on items the month it's brought up, that we vote on them the following month after giving a month to the committees assigned to the issue to do the research on it. So it's not an urgent matter because of the COVID lack of flights. So it gives us a full month to really look at it carefully. I believe David's going to talk about the fact that after months of study, they chose the Winghaven site. And happy to hear about that, but the vote will be at next month's meeting to give to the board. I'll mute myself again.
Point of order.
Who
Diane?
said that?
This is Gene.
Okay, Jean, yes.
Can we vote to suspend that rule for this vote? Because this has been studied for so long and we're so delayed in getting this monitor on the island that we could suspend that rule for just this opportunity with everybody that's here, hearing everybody's questions and hearing David and all of these things that have already been taking place.
June, if this were an urgent matter, if time were of the essence, then we could, by a 2/3 vote, suspend the rules, the bylaws, to allow a vote this month. But given the fact that there's such a dramatic decrease in the noise from the port, that it doesn't appear to be an urgent matter, and we only will get the temporary monitor for a period of 12 months, it would be hard, I think, to make the case that we need to suspend the bylaws and vote on it right now.
So, Rob, you want to continue?
I was asking David to give us a summary.
Yeah. So, yeah, this again, when I met with the port, there was an absolute requirement back then on public property, and for understandable reasons. Obviously, private property can have a lot of entanglements. Then you have a single individual who can cause issues. So, public property does make a lot of rational sense. Towards as the main in South Flow, which we are predominantly, the planes are descending as they're heading north, and are the north of the island, the lower the altitude would be. So ideally, you'd want to be under that bright red line. Pre-COVID, around 250 a day. Winghaven Park, close to that. There's an upper shelf of the park which is inaccessible to the lower trail. If any of you have hiked to Winghaven, there's a cliff leading to it. However, it is accessible via a property near it, who has kind of been a caretaker of this section of the park, which is otherwise uninhabited. The person who lives in there for 20 years and is kind of the caretaker has never seen a single person in that part of the park ever in 20 years. It has no noise from the highway or the ferry due to topology. There's a mountain in the way, basically. There is PSC could bring in power if they needed to from the other properties. These are technical things about looking at potential solar. You can always add more solar panels to get whatever power you need. I talked to the Larson Davis people as well about that. Or PSC can do it. That's going to take probably weeks to sort out anyway with PSC if that's required. So overall, it looks like I've been studying this for 5 years now, and really have been looking in the back of my mind where would be the ideal place to put one to capture especially the Hawks noise, which is in South Flow, the planes flying north. So anyway, that's a summary. In terms of doing it right now, I don't think that is actually required. There's a lot of technical due diligence that can happen in parallel, that all preparations get made so that if we had a vote, all the ducks would be in a row in terms of technical issues and getting other issues lined up legally between the Park District and the Port of Seattle. So that's all prepared. So a month delay, I don't think is a big issue now.
Thank you, David. Vanessa Richter has a question. Vanessa, are you ready? You can unmute yourself, or I can try to unmute you for you. I don't hear anymore. Okay, well, if Vanessa returns, then we can.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear
Hello?
you. Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So, Stan, thank you for going through that presentation. I guess I'm walking away with all of the things that a noise monitor won't do for us, and I'm wondering if you can explain what it would do for us and anything it would influence, and more importantly, what other actions can you recommend that we be doing so that we can be influencing the decision makers, because you're saying that you are not able to do that.
Yeah, and noise monitoring data is more informational for the community. So it gives you a good depiction of what the noise levels are of those aircraft that are flying over. That's the best use for it. again, we at the Port of Seattle are not going to make any of our decisions about what mitigation programs are or what aircraft are flying at the airport based on noise monitoring data. Again, the FAA doesn't use it and refuses to use it for any kind of basis for their flight procedures program. So it has very limited use as far as the airport is concerned on that. We don't have a lot of uses for it. The closed-in noise monitors we do use for monitoring some of our flight quiet programs and our late night noise limitations programs, those things. But noise monitors farther out from that area, informational only to the community.
So what actions do you recommend then, Stan? I mean, as being a key partner in helping us understand in this community what we can do, what actions beyond this do you recommend?
Yeah, and I don't have a lot of recommendations for it. I mean, the issue is, again, it's the condensed flight path that goes down the center of the island, and that's been your biggest concern when it was implemented. So that strictly goes back to an FAA policy decision about where those aircraft are flying and how they're going to be flying. I know they felt that when they implemented those procedures, there was a great benefit to a lot of people in Vashon that we're not going to get the other flights. And then there was the issue with the condensed flight path, condensing it. So there's both sides to the coin with that. Unfortunately, I don't have a big silver coin. There's a lot of things that play into the FAA and how they're managing their flight procedures. And if you can talk with them and maybe have one of them come out to your meetings, that might help.
How do we get in contact with who that would be? Do we have to find that out on our own, or?
If you want to go through that webpage, that Ombudsman from the FAA Northwest region is the person that you would be in contact with, and that person could coordinate any kind of information that needs to get to you and people.
And I noticed someone during this chat had a link to the contact information that Stan's referring to at the FAA. If you wanted to go back through the chat, it's there.
Okay, so Vanessa, we're going to move on to another question. We have a question here from Laura Bienan, and her question is, altitude is a significant contribution to noise variation. Is it the FAA that determines altitude as well as flight path?
Yeah, so everything in the sky is the FAA. If that airplane is flying in the sky overhead, it's the FAA directing it to the altitude it's at, including the speed where it's at, and the location where it's at. So FAA is air traffic control.
Yes, David. You're muted. Hang on.
I got it. Okay, thanks. Vanessa, I think that it's a real good idea to get the FAA into the community council for discussion, because they may be more receptive to community discussion, given the fact that they have lost a few lawsuits in Phoenix, I believe in the Washington, D.C. area, two community groups, basically municipalities, have been suing the FAA because of the next gen. And so the fact that they have had these losses in court would make them perhaps more receptive to a unified community presentation. And then if that fails, the community council has in the past represented the island of Vashon in lawsuits. So it's a possibility.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another question. Jean Coons, would you like to ask it in person or shall I read it for you? The
That's
question
fine.
is, do we have any contacts on island who is connected or knows someone from the FAA?
That'd be a little research that maybe the committee should do, just to double check. Maybe David's already done that, David Goebel.
This is Vanessa. I'm willing to help.
Okay, Vanessa, I would suggest that you contact David Goebel and offer your help.
Well, in fact, I was going to introduce to the council, the community council, the fact that we are starting a committee, the Airplane Overflight Committee, or whatever the group decides to name itself, and David Goebel will be the chair of that committee. So everyone who is very interested in this issue should contact David and get onto that committee so you can be involved in these discussions. And it's going to go beyond probably just the location of the noise monitoring to other issues like dealing with the FAA. So Dave, if you could talk to the council that we have here and do a little recruitment speech, I'd love it.
Yeah, obviously, for overflight, it's an airport noise and air aviation noise in general committee. So it won't be just the Hawks next gen overflights. There are other people that are affected by departures, which tend to take parts of Vashon. People are always most familiar with what impacts them. And on the north end of the island, I'm obviously most impacted by the Hawks because I'm at the lowest point of it as well, and nearly right underneath it, and directly underneath Mariner. It goes right through my house. But so I would like to have people who have direct experience with those departures, and then also from the East Maury Island, from that background din of just the almost 7/24, right? Operations at the airport. It's just constant background in. And certain atmospheric conditions, I can hear it as well over the water, even up here on the north end, just depending. So yeah, a breadth of people's experience. Some people also have written to me complaining about the general aviation noise, which is small private-owned airplanes. There's not going to be a lot. Certainly the port, nothing, and the FAA can do about that. That's really just individuals making decisions. And a lot of those people actually live on the island, right? They own planes on the island. They're our neighbors. You can find out who actually owns those planes when you click on the button that gives you the registration. You can look it up, and someone you can actually talk to people. If they're your neighbors, you can find out, is it possible, if it's happening at a certain time of the day that you don't want. So that's completely separate. You don't actually need any sort of cooperation with the FAA for that. That's just reaching out to people that are flying these small planes. But yeah, that's the kind of the collection of people I was looking for. I mean, one or two more about other next year and stuff. But I mean, I probably dumped thousands of hours into this. I shouldn't say dump, but I've invested thousands of hours into it. I would say on the noise monitor issue, yes, what Santa's saying is correct about what the FAA's current, what they currently accept for input. However, they also outright refuse to change anything in Phoenix until a three-panel judge, a federal judge, has told them they had to. So nothing is set in concrete. Obviously, if you've ever studied science, the idea that you would make decisions, not look at experimental data, that we're only going to look at models, and then we're not going to look at, like, if you're doing climate change studies, you're going to refuse to look at a thermometer. You're only going to go look at your models and not verify them. And then for looking at actual experimental data is well, it's absurd. So watch this space. It could be changing.
I guess one of the things that Dave Goebbels is just saying is that this is going to give us data, and that's an important thing. We need information no matter what we're going to do. And so we're very grateful to the port for allowing us to have one of these temporary monitors so we can get the data.
there other questions about this, or shall we move on with the rest of the agenda? If you have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay.
I have a question.
Looking at the agenda, the next item is, okay.
I have a question. This is Kari. It's a very basic question. What is the elevation that is kind of like the benchmark for noise and everything else? What is the legal or the aimed for elevation for an airplane? I receive the reports from my air noise, and quite frankly, I can no longer judge what is acceptable and what isn't from the elevation information that's received.
Well, there really isn't a specific altitude that's unacceptable or illegal. The FAA, again, is directing those aircraft where to be in the sky and the altitude that they're at. So if you have a small aircraft, or basically any aircraft that's on level flight, in other words, they're not coming into or going out of an airport, I believe the level flight is a minimum of 1,000 feet.
Oh, God. Okay.
One more question or comment, and that is the airplane.
Whoever is trying to speak, could you identify yourself?
Bad connection.
Okay. Stan, I had a question.
The worst platform I've ever been on. I think you ought to change the Zoom next time. This is awful. What I said, my name is Roxanne, is that the pollution of the airplane has increased by moving into the next gen fuel.
Roxanne, we can't hear you. If you could submit your question in the chat, we can ask the question.
So I could ask Stan a question. I noticed that the flight paths over Vashon seem to be about halfway from one side of the Puget Sound to the other. Is there a reason that flights cannot be routed directly to the east of Vashon, where there are no people?
I'm not sure where that would be. To the east of Vashon, you would still have overflights from communities. And I know they did look at a track that was closer towards the east side. And it's by no means, you can't just stay over water the entire time. There will be overflights over some communities. But when they looked at that closer in, the aircraft, what I remember, had too tight of a bank angle coming around, turning through the bay. So they moved it farther over towards the west, and they've adjusted those over time to make sure that it was an optimal turn.
Okay, that's
my
question.
From what I've heard.
Yeah, too tight a turn?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, The next item on the agenda is community announcements.
Wait one
Oops,
sec.
sorry, what, David?
It looks
Okay.
like Roxanne's question was next gen increases pollution over Vashon Island, both noise and chemical. And I guess the question was for Stan, but I don't know that there's really an answer for that.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah. And here's a question from Kate Spellman. So Stan has likely never been in his house with a plane overhead at 1,000 feet. I suppose she's inviting you to come live here. Experiencing.
I've been around aircraft noise all my life. I live in Columbia City, just north of the flight or the airport. So I fully understand airport noise.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, Gene?
Yeah. So the case that was won, what was the cause of them winning that case? Was it pollution? Was it just the noise?
Gene, I have not studied those cases yet. I don't know if David has looked at those cases closely. I believe it was the noise pollution, but I haven't read them, but those would be instructive.
I've read the briefs of every single case that have ever been, and the judgments for ones are both successful and not successful. The key thing in Phoenix was that the FAA made a change without even doing a CADX called a categorical exclusion. So the important thing was when the final decision, the record decision, which was effectively when they implemented the change, that's when the clock started running for a 60-day limit. They Phoenix, and they kind of went back and forth between the city. The city runs the airport there, between the city and the FAA, and there was a trail, so that even though they sued late, about 6 months late, they were able to convince a 3-judge panel to make an exception to the usual 60-day rule. So they were able to hear the case on the merits. And then as soon as the case were heard on the merits, it was successful. There's lots of great quotes in that if you read that judgment. One is that if the idea that a change of this magnitude would not be controversial is so implausible, it doesn't represent reasoned decision making. This is a state federal court, basically very direct with the FAA. That was only because they got over that 60-day hurdle, and that was because the FAA left enough of a paper trail of basically leading the city on. No, that was only 6 months. In the case of Seattle, the record decision was in October 31st, 2012. It wasn't substantially implemented until years later. So by the time we noticed any change above us, it was already years too late to sue the normal way. So that's kind of really not terribly fair, really. And there was, when Greener Skies was being studied in an environmental assessment, there was no outreach on Vashon. The General Accounting Office is actually looking into that right now. We had a meeting with them earlier this month, and they're going to investigate what's going on there. There's a lot of things in the, a lot of things baking in the oven right now associated with this all, much more than we can touch on here.
You're muted, David.
Yeah, I took it off. What it sounds
Okay.
like to me, David, is that the Phoenix case was done under the Administrative Procedure Act, and it was critical of the procedures that the FAA made in changing its rules, notice and community outreach and the like. So apparently that's target gone by for this community, but there may be other avenues to look at.
Yeah, it was a classic arbitrary and capricious. I mean, that was the standard they used in Phoenix, and there were some special, unique things that had some historical sites that did not take it all into consideration how that would affect the ambient atmosphere at those historical sites. So there were some interesting one-offs they had in Phoenix, but it was the normal standard of arbitrary and capricious, and that's what they met, and that's why the the FAA. That's why the three-judge panel vacated the FAA change that implemented the next gen. There were departures in the case of Phoenix. So, and here's another one. So that's kind of, there's a lot of, if you like reading legal briefs and judgments, I can send you a whole bunch of them. So yeah, just David at ifs.org if in case, and many of you have already seen them all. So.
Diane, and the next item on the agenda?
The next item on the agenda is announcements.
Oh, okay. Do we have announcements?
We're gonna leave, so I'll let you to your business, and I appreciate your time.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Stan, to cut you off. Yeah, no, we really appreciate your coming here and spending your time with us.
No problem. Let us know your decisions. Happy to talk to you. If you have any questions, anybody does, go ahead and just let us know.
And I take it then that you're not opposed to the Winghaven site. It's just that it hasn't been fully considered yet.
Secure and accessible with power. Make sure it's secure and accessible. So
okay.
We need.
Good.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to both the Davids again for giving the Port of Seattle this opportunity, and we look forward to, as Stan said, getting a recommendation from you in about a month.
Great. Thank you, Marco. And thanks
Thank you
for arranging this.
Thank you.
Okay. So do we have community announcements at this time? Do we have people who have announcements regarding anything happening in the community? Okay. Well, let's see then.
The next thing is topics for future meetings. What other issues do you think we should be talking about?
Well, I know that one thing that had been brought up to the community council recently was the fact that some of the businesses on the island are having such a difficult time. And so I know that some of us wanted to reach out to the Chamber of Commerce and see if a good topic for discussion would be, what can the community do to help businesses in need on the island? Is that something that might interest people? Okay. But are there any other topics that people would like to contribute and would like to hear discussed at the Community Council in the next couple of months?
This is Kari.
Hi, Kari.
One of the concerns that I have is, and granted, I don't know if this is totally factual or not, but apparently there was a large wedding on this island, and there was a great deal of concern because the mandate was for wearing masks, etc., and there is a now public policy, at least by our governor, to say that weddings, etc., have to be limited, and it wasn't. And so my concern is, apparently there's no recourse for the rest of us to complain if COVID-19 increases as a result of that. So I guess that's something that I was thinking of, is what in the way of legal enforcement, etc., without being a, God forgive me, but a Nazi about it, what can we do as people who are subject to this without knowing it? I'm not expressing this really clearly, but I'm just concerned when I see a bunch of people, like, for a wedding, or God forbid a motorcycle rally or whatever. I mean, we're supposed to adhere to the standards the governor has dictated or mandated. So maybe something from law enforcement, or find out, something along that, because I feel really helpless when we get people coming over here and they don't respect the wishes of our community and the mandate for the governor, from the governor. So I don't know if it's a legal issue, whatever.
Well, many years ago, I think they had some folks waiting for the mosquito fleet with pitchforks. So, we could always have a welcome committee, but short of that, I think perhaps writing a letter to the beachcomber about these things and just bringing it out in the public and basically shaming people for their behavior.
Well, I don't know. The law isn't enforcing any of this. Even my understanding is the wedding already took place. So it's, it's about prevention moving forward.
Well, we can always write letters to the editor and the beachcomber and express your opinion to the public. It's a very valid concern. I know that when people are not wearing masks, it doesn't just show that they're not concerned about their own health, but it shows they're not concerned about other people's health. So it's a really valid concern.
But it's got to have something. Let's see. I don't know.
To it. It needs to have teeth for enforcement, right?
Exactly.
Well, if the governor does not say that there will be enforcement by police, then it's left to people's good consciences.
So I think at this point we need to write the governor and make it put a fine on it or whatever. I don't know. It's just something I thought I'd toss out as an issue, because if it's a mandate, to me that's a law. Maybe, I don't know. I as I said, I'm not sure. I'll mute myself.
Kari, unless you have enforcement of the law, a law has no teeth. And so it's basically the governor telling the police, I need this to be enforced. Yeah. Tough issue. Okay, well, I guess at this point, I'd like to just say that our next meeting is going to be September 21st at 7 p.m. Again, it's going to be via Webex. And David, if you can have a couple of meetings of your committee and come up with a recommendation for our next meeting, we can put it on the agenda and take a vote on it for citing the location of the noise monitor.
Yes.
Great. Then let's do that. We'll put that on our agenda for next month. Okay.
Okay, I guess that's it, unless anyone has any last words. So thank you very much for attending this meeting, and sorry for the technical difficulties. We do this once a month. A group like this, it's hard to get used to doing it all smoothly.
Yep. Okay, thank you all. Take care.
Thank you. See you, Diane.
See ya.
See you, David.
See ya.
David.
Thanks, Diane and David. Good job.